Welcome to this edition of the Astrological Weather Report. My name is Daniel Fiverson. I'm an evolutionary astrologer trained and certified in the Jeffrey Wolf Green School of Evolutionary Astrology. I'm an astrological intuitive, and I've studied astrology, tarot, and I Ching since the 1960s. In this astrological weather report, I'm going to focus on the personal astrological weather each of us has instilled by the house where Pluto is in our natal chart. This is the first of two sessions. Today, I will discuss the Pluto's placement through houses from the first house to the sixth house, and part two will be next week, date and time to be announced. So let's begin. We know the what's of our lives, but do we know the whys? We might understand how the sun and moon and in our natal charts express our personalities, and how the ascendant describes how we meet the world. But do you know why the circumstances of our lives have unfolded the way they have? And do you know why the people who helped or hurt you came into your lives when they did? Pluto in the chart holds the answer to these questions. Pluto correlates directly to the soul and the natural law of evolution. The soul is an immutable consciousness with a finite identity that persists from lifetime to lifetime. The soul, the higher self, your guardian angel, is the source and extension of who and what we are. It is the part of us that exists outside of time and space. We are not human beings having a human experience. We are not human beings having a spiritual experience. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. Each lifetime is the experience of the soul having that human experience. The soul manifests a human personality lifetime after lifetime. It has been suggested that time is not linear. Instead, consider that it might be simultaneous. Someone once asked God, "Why did you create time?" And he or she answered, "So that everything would not happen all at once." Pluto is the base node of our natal chart. In evolutionary astrology, Pluto is the entry point into the chart to solve the astrological puzzle, not the sun, moon, or ascendant. It is Pluto. An understanding of the individual's life context must be gathered to unravel the chart's archetypal patterns. Every chart has three axes. The position of the planets represent time. The houses represent geographical space, and that's two-dimensional. But there's a third dimension, which is the third axis of consciousness of the individual whose chart is being read. And it is perpendicular to the planets and houses of the chart. It comes in directly through the center of the chart. And it's how the individual's life story is that third element that determines how the archetypes are expressed. Each archetype has a full spectrum of expression from distortion to enlightenment. According to the Jeffrey Wolf Green School of Method of Evolutionary Astrology, there are three primary evolutionary states: consensus, individuating, and spiritualizing. The evolution of consciousness is like a musical keyboard. We have both hands on the keyboard, on the keys, playing lower, middle, and perhaps higher notes all at the same time, but we're always moving from the lower keys to the higher keys. Understanding the querent's place along this evolutionary spectrum is necessary. It's how we know how the chart is working. We are all on the same path, but at different mile markers. To determine the mile marker of the querent, they must be questioned non-invasively at their comfort level about their personal history and their current life circumstances. Once this is understood, the nature of each planetary archetype will be revealed, and a holistic image of the chart will begin to emerge. You can systematically gather the chart's particulars, following the trail that begins with Pluto and the lunar nodes. It is as much an intuitive process as it is using what you have learned from books, lectures, and reading other charts. So let's talk about Pluto. Pluto encapsulates what has come before. our karmic history, through our emotional memory. We do not remember our past lives intellectually. From lifetime to lifetime, we pick up where we left off. The emotional experiences of the first 7 years of our lives, leading up to our first Saturn square, are the reminders of where we left off in our evolutionary path. The soul has desires just like we do. Pluto correlates to the desires of the soul that have led to the current lifetime and the desires that set its evolutionary needs in motion. Pluto is the evolutionary engine that is constantly moving us forward. Evolutionary intention propels us forward even when it feels like we are standing still or moving backward. Pluto correlates to power. It was discovered in 1930 when physics first began understanding the atom's power and atomic energy. Its initial application was for the production of bombs. That pursuit changed the balance of power in the world. Later, science found a way to harness the atom for peaceful applications. When analyzing Pluto in the chart, we learn how the personality expresses that power. With Pluto, power is generally expressed in 3 ways: standing in our power, giving our power away, or having someone else take our power away. Pluto is not just another planet in the chart. It's the base note of the chart. It correlates to our karma, the unfinished work we have brought with us into this lifetime from the past. The house placement of Pluto sets the nature of the soul's desires for this lifetime. I work with a house system based on the 12-letter astrological alphabet. The first house is formatted with the Aries Mars archetype. The second house is Taurus Venus. The third house is Mercury Gemini, and so on. Someone with Pluto in the first house is an Aries soul. With Pluto in the 10th house, they are a Capricorn soul. Pluto in the 12th house is a Pisces soul, and so on. Excuse me. Regardless of which house Pluto occupies, all of the following evolutionary conditions will be true. The outer planets will shape and format the consciousness and unconscious parts of the self and the generational influences. The planetary conditions of the Sun, Moon, and personal planets, Mercury, Venus, and Mars, will format the nature of the personality. And the house placement of the planet that rules the house Pluto is in, any planet in the sign it rules and the house it rules, will add intensity and dimension. For instance, for Pluto in the first house, this would correspond to the house Mars is in and the house with Aries on the cusp. Other planets in the house with Pluto will add expression, and the lunar nodes, if resident, will add karmic intensity. Each house alternates in polarity in succession between yang, male or day energy moving outward from the center, and yin, female or night energy moving inward back towards the center. So let's look at Pluto in the first house and the ascendant. The ascendant or rising sign delineates the first house. It is the point in the sky that was on the eastern horizon at the moment of birth. This is the birth point, involution, spirit into matter. As human beings, we come into the world head first, eyes wide open, not even knowing if someone will be there to catch us before we hit the floor. The first house is purely instinctive expression. This is Mars, cardinal fire. The ascendant is how we meet the world. Mars, Aries in the first house are male or day energy, and yang energy moves outward from the center. Ruled by Mars, the first house is instinctive, impulsive, and non-cognitive. Like the tip of our noses, our instinctive behavior is invisible to us, but others can see it. Some Western astrology presents the first house as a projection. The projection is the 7th house, and Libra, the polarity point of Aries. And I will talk about that a little later. Those born with Pluto in the first house are Aries souls. They meet the world head on. Aries is the fire element, the cardinal sign of the fire triad that continues through Leo and Sagittarius. Fire is spirit, and this triad correlates to the self-actualization process, who we are becoming. Aries souls are learning about themselves by trial and error. The Hindus call this neti neti, not this, not this. Aries souls require freedom to act independently, and they tolerate no restrictions. They are anchored in who they are and they believe themselves to be. They can be stubborn and immovable, and they are often very sure of themselves and entirely self-directed. There is a forceful approach to life situations. They need to learn to balance their need for freedom with their need for relationship, which is the Libra polarity point. The Pluto polarity point in the 7th house of Libra potentiates balance and initiates the need for relationships with others. The process of self-discovery creates a feeling that there is something that they can learn about themselves through interaction with others. This is the projection. We see ourselves in others. There is something in the other that is in us. Libra and the 7th house reflect at us as the mirror to our soul. So Pluto in the 2nd house. The 2nd house correlates to Taurus and its ruler Venus. This is the fixed expression of the earth element. Those born with Pluto in the 2nd house are Taurus souls. Taurus is the yin, the inward-facing expression of Venus. Taurus grounds, centers, and stabilizes the Aryan energies back into the earth. In the 1st house, we are born. In the 2nd house, we recognize that we're here. What have we brought with us to survive? Taurus correlates to the biological instinct for survival. It becomes sex as the procreation of the species. Whatever is necessary to survive correlates to our values. It creates meaning and sets our priorities. People born with Pluto in the 2nd house tend to have a strong survival instinct and sexual nature. Taurus represents self-reliance and self-containment. In past lives, they needed to withdraw into themselves to develop their value systems. They tend to over-isolate, get cut off from the greater life, and stay content in their small space, giving them a sense of control. The need for survival can lead to a desire to over-accumulate material goods, money, possessions, elaborate homes, food and wine, and the good life. Excuse me. Venus is the goddess of relationship. The yang outer expression of Venus in Libra is our relationship with others. In Taurus, it's our relationship with ourselves. We each emit an energetic frequency correlating to the quotient of our self-love along the spectrum from self-hate to conditional love to unconditional love. Most of us are somewhere in the middle. There are things about ourselves we might be proud of and things that we're not so proud of and hide from others. We abandon the disliked parts of ourselves and bury them in our subconscious. However, these fragments of ourselves are still active below our conscious awareness. Astrologically, Venus correlates to magnetism. Our self-love quotient is an energetic frequency that we broadcast 7/24. It is in our etheric field. It is undetectable by ourselves, but implicitly perceived by everyone else. This is what is called the law of attraction. Yes, it can be about money and possessions, but what we attract is a function of what we think we deserve. There is a natural inconjunct between the 2nd house Taurus, our relationship with ourselves, and the 7th house Libra, our relationship with others. An inconjunct is a 150-degree angle that indicates a crisis that necessitates an adjustment. Jeffrey Wolf Green taught that this natural crisis generates the need to be self-reliant and fulfill our needs, but it is also how our needs can be projected onto others. We become dependent by creating expectations that others can satisfy our own needs. Crises will occur when our projected expectations do not materialize. The crisis forces that person back upon themselves so self-reliance can be developed. Only evolutionary astrology teaches this total understanding of the Venus archetype. Pluto's polarity point in the 8th house will lead the Taurus native into confrontations that will reveal the limits of their value systems and shake them out of isolation. The 8th house teaches that there is more to life than material values. They will have to open up and merge with others. They will discover how they have limited themselves by being overly isolated and having values that are too fixed. The 8th house represents a major metamorphosis, causing people with Pluto in the 2nd house to begin to open up. These people tend to change slowly, creating the possibility of cataclysmic change, which is an 8th house Pluto-Scorpio archetype. They can learn how to merge with others without becoming codependent. Pluto in the 3rd house is an archetype of Gemini, ruled by Mercury. Like Venus, Mercury rules 2 signs. Gemini is Mercury's outer, yang expression. Virgo is Mercury's inner yin expression. People born with Pluto in the 3rd house are Gemini souls. In the 3rd house, we become aware of the world, the space around us, our siblings, our immediate environment, and our neighborhood. Gemini is the adaptable, mutable expression of the air element. It is mental and concerned with thoughts and ideas. Security is based on our understanding of things. We learn to speak and develop language skills to communicate and share our thoughts and ideas with others. Our intellectual curiosity develops. Gemini souls have had a past life emphasis on developing their mind and intellect. They must find a rational way to explain their relationships to their environment. Relationships with others, Libra, the cardinal expression of the air element, is needed to process themselves. The 3rd house and Gemini correlate to the lower rational mind. Pluto in the 3rd house, people are intellectually restless due to their need to take in new information continually. There is a mental restlessness that needs to collect more and more facts. They cobble together data and ideas, hoping to weave them into a single paradigm. Everything is seen as being relative. In the final analysis, there's no way to tie everything together. There are too many facts to arrange in too many interrelated ways. The sense of security dissolves when new facts undermine what is already known. And this crisis can lead to cycles of intellectual implosion and then expansion. The Pluto polarity point in the 9th house initiates the intention to develop the right brain and intuitive nature. The left brain intellectual nature is already highly developed from the past life experiences. These individuals need to find the deeper meaning of the collected facts. They need to understand the natural laws that are the basis of all life. Over time, they learn to become less granular. A holistic conception of reality can emerge using intuition and the higher mind, Uranus, and Pallas Athena, goddess of wisdom and strategy, who acts as the octave transformer between Mercury, the lower octave rational mind, and Uranus, the higher octave irrational mind. They learn to integrate the Mercurial left brain and the Sagittarius right brain to see the bigger picture. Pluto in the 4th house. The 4th house is the archetype of Cancer, ruled by the moon. In the 1st house, we are born. In the 2nd house, we assess what we have brought with us that we need to survive. In the 3rd house, we create a mental construct of the world around us. In the fourth house, we see ourselves for the first time through our emotional body. Those born with Pluto in the fourth house are Cancer souls. The core desire of the soul is security. The moon and Cancer, the sign it rules, correlate to security by finding emotional self-reliance. The moon correlates to the emotional body. Our emotions are the body's litmus test for security. The moon responds or reacts through our emotional experiences in each moment. The moon is the most conscious part of our psyches and the focal point of our awareness. In Cancer in the fourth house, we give ourselves a name and an identity, who I am and how I feel. Cancer is a cardinal sign. Each cardinal sign, Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn, signifies that a new cycle is beginning. The lesson in the fourth house is that security is internal and not found in parents, jobs, lovers, homes, or money. In Cancer, we learn how to develop our emotional self-reliance. Each personality the soul manifests as an ego, which correlates to the moon. The moon is our self-image, how we see ourselves. It is our ego. The ego is not a bad word. The moon performs the function of a lens on a movie projector. Without the lens, there is no clear image. Most Pluto and fourth house people are born with difficult family situations. One or both parents did not provide the child with healthy emotional experiences. Their emotional needs were not met. This is a challenging environment for a child. This forces the child back on themselves. They realize early in life that they must fulfill their emotional needs for themselves. Most of these people have had a series of past lives in similar conditions. Often, they have prior life unresolved karma with one or both parents. In romantic relationships, they can draw in partners with psychological makeups similar to one or both parents. The unconscious need is again to resolve the unresolved karmas and fulfill their emotional needs. Because the partner's nature is identical to the nature of the parents, the needs are still unmet, and once again, they're thrown back in on themselves. They must learn how to supply their emotional needs and find internal security. All fourth house people experience a wide range of emotions intensely. Everything is deeply felt. We grow through direct emotional experience. An external experience often triggers the moods. This leads to self-knowledge and ultimately inner security. The polarity point in the 10th house creates the acceptance of responsibility for their actions and emotional maturity, Capricorn functions, and how to integrate their personality into society. This learning occurs through work and career. They can escape victim mode by projecting themselves out into the social sphere. They begin to realize that the conditions of their childhood were a karmic necessity for their evolution, and that the parental figure's lack of nurturing was required. Pluto in the fifth house. The fifth house is Leo, the lion's den, ruled by the sun. Those with Leo in the fifth house are Leo souls. Leo is fixed, yang, the second archetype of the fire element, which is the self-actualizing process that began in the first house in Aries. In the fifth house, we now have an ego, a self-image. This self-image is now projected outward as our personality. We build on everything we have learned through the first four houses, our values and priorities, and what we need to survive, our conceptual understanding of the world, and our sense of who we are. Leo in the fifth house formats how we find our purpose in life. People in the fifth house can feel that they have a unique destiny to fulfill. They are born with the feeling of specialness and the need to be recognized. Sometimes this need is so intense, it can become a bottomless pit to need to be the center of attention. They can feel the universe revolves around them, just as the sun is the center of our solar system. Many fifth house Plutos had past lives where they were recognized as unique in some way. They have unconscious memories of this special treatment and can unintentionally expect to be again treated and acknowledged in this way. One of the dangers is that they can feel that somehow they have a mission and over-aggrandize their importance. They feel like they are the apex of the pyramid. They unintentionally project the force of their self-actualization and purpose onto those around them. They can be very giving and generous, yet the generosity often serves some personal need for recognition. With the Pluto polarity point in the 11th house, they need to move out of the small, often selfish space and begin to share their vitality, love of life, and unique destiny, if there is one, with their community. They need to recognize that everyone is the center of their universe and to allow room for others to express their individuality. Ultimately, the overexuberance results in crisis, opening the pathway for work on the self and the next sign of Virgo. Pluto in the 6th house. The 6th house correlates to Mercury's inner yin expression in Virgo. The polarity of Virgo is Pisces. These folks are Virgo souls. In Pisces, we go up on the mountain to seek spiritual enlightenment. In Virgo, we must come back down to earth to do the work, carry water, and chop wood. Virgo is specifically the archetype of work on the self. Coming in on the heels of overly exuberant Leo, the soul needs to refine its nature so that it can be in relationship with others in Libra in society. Buddhists call this takma, polishing the stone to make it a gem. We don't generally think of Virgo as either creative or spiritual, but it is both. Some astrologers suggest that Chiron rules Virgo. Chiron's root word is Chairo, the Greek word for the hand. Virgos are masters of handiwork. They can create exquisite works that have practical as well as decorative use. The archetype of Virgo is about growth through crisis. Virgos are experiencing the crisis created by an overabundance of ego expression. As human beings, we do not learn through mental inspiration or understanding. We learn through direct emotional experience. This is the foundation of the work on the self in Virgo. People born with Pluto in the 6th house have been learning to be of service. They have been learning humility, discrimination, and self-improvement. They develop these qualities through intense self-analysis. There's a reflective quality to their approach to life. In the 6th house, we are not yet in relationship, but in contact with others. We make comparisons with self and the other. The pyramid that was upright in Leo is inverted in Virgo. Virgos often feel not good enough, being at the bottom of the heap with everyone else above them. Their self-perceived flaws and personality imperfections are readily apparent to themselves. This contrast to others begins the process of self-examination. With their Pluto polarity point in the 12th house, they learn to simplify and dissolve the mental constructs that they have created about their lack of confidence. There is a need to purge the excesses of the ego and the need for perfection. Once they complete this work, they can be in relationship with others and join the rest of society as equals. Thank you for joining this discussion. Next week, I will discuss Pluto's placement through the house from the 7th house to the 12th house. Watch my public service announcements for the date and time. Please join me. Until then, be safe, be kind, be patient, keep working on the dream. Namaste, Daniel.